Good afternoon and welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee of Monday, 27th of March 2023. Thank you everybody for coming along today. We've had a reminder about phones and using the mute button, so I don't need to repeat that again. I understand there aren't any apologies. And can we just confirm from Councillor Harvey if he's online?
Yes, I'm online.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? If there are, can you just put DI in the comment? Nope, that's fine. And can members agree the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee of the 7th of December 2022? Great, thank you very much. Now I've got the annual audit plan, and I'm going to ask Maggie Bruce to introduce the report on the annual audit plan.
Thank you, Chair. I can pass to Brian Howard, please.
I think Maggie's volunteering me to do this, Chair. I think. I'll just run briefly through some of the.
Sorry, can I?
Sorry, Brian Howarth, Audit Director with Audit Scotland, External Auditor for Puffink and Ross Council. And in fact, that's one of the first things I was going to mention in paragraph 2 of our report, just to say I'm happy to be appointed now as the auditor for the next 5 years. It's great to be here. One of the things that we take this opportunity to do at committee is, as suggested at paragraph 11, is if there's anything that we need to know as auditors that might be relevant to planning the audit that committee members might want to tell us about. We mentioned frauds as an example, but there could be wider things that want to be brought to our attention. So it's a good opportunity in being here for anything of those sort of issues to be brought to our attention if you think it's relevant. Just running through the rest of the report, in Exhibit 2, we identify our significant risks that we've identified as part of planning the audit. The first of these is management override. We're required by the auditing standards to recognise this, and we design specific audit procedures around our audit to address that. In terms of other risks, significant risks, valuations is a big thing. We've seen significant increases in house rebuild and retender costs across the building industry, and that's a key component of valuations in most of the assets of the council. So we are particularly interested in how that's reflected in current value revaluations, both in other land and buildings and in council houses. The other significant risk within the council here is there is a change in the cash management system, which is brought in just at the moment at the very tail end of this current year, and we'll be looking at the processes for transferring over balances and ensuring reconciliations take place in the old and the new system. In terms of wider or other non-significant risks, our plan mentions a couple of these. Pensions valuations, particularly expecting changes in the discount rates this year and the valuation. And also PFI accounting model, just checking the liabilities, significant annual review of the assumptions within the PFI liabilities. And as part of that as well, I understand the council is going to make use of the financial flexibilities that are allowed under reprofiling PFI loans fund repayments. So we'll look at some of the detail of that as well as part of the audit. Just in terms of the wider audit, paragraph 21, there are changes in auditing standards, which we will be looking in a bit more detail IT controls this year and issues such as cyber security of key systems, and we'll report any issues we find from that in due course. In terms of the wider code, value for money stuff, paragraph 33, we'll be looking at collecting some baseline information on climate change across the public sector bodies for basis of informing national reporting. The other big thing I suppose to mention is around best value reporting locally. The best value process now is built into the annual audit process, and we'll be looking at updating prior recommendations, the progress against prior recommendations, looking at performance reporting and assessing the vision and leadership of the council as part of this year's audit of best value. It's probably worth just saying on page 21 of the papers, Exhibit 5, we recognise the resourcing legacy of COVID-19. It's having particularly an ongoing effect on the audit planning. We're aiming at the moment for end of October sign-off for the council, which is a bit later, I think, than you've been used to. That is really inhibited just by our process within Audit Scotland of catching up on that, the legacy that we've been left of COVID. We're still making quite late starts on this year's audit. Chair, I think probably just like to leave it there and take comments or questions from any of the members, if that's okay with you.
Do members have any questions of the auditors? Councillor Collins-Stewart.
Thanks, convener. If I could look at the table in section 15, exhibit 1, and the reporting threshold, where you're required to report to those charged with governance and all unadjusted misstatements more than the reporting threshold amount, and that is £250,000, which is that seems like a big number to me, bigger than it should be. Is that standard? And is the wording clearly trivial associated with £250,000? Is that appropriate?
I think the phrase "clearly trivial" is probably an older term that we would have used quite openly with an audit. And one point, it is the reporting threshold. £250,000 is actually the maximum we're allowed to use for this figure. Currently, it's dictated to us under our Code of Audit Practice and Planning Guidance. There are some bodies, I think, where it probably should be higher, if I'm being honest. 250,000, what it allows us to do is to not report a lot of the minor issues to you, but to focus on the reporting of the bigger issues. £250,000 is consistent with other bodies of this size and seems appropriate to me. I mean, we could vary it, but it would mean reporting even more issues probably to Audit Committee as part of our annual audit reporting.
Are there any other questions for the auditors? Councillor Collins-Stewart.
On a completely different subject, I presume a lot of the auditing time will be spent here in 2 High Street with the finance team. Do you, Parthink and Ross is obviously a very rural council area with lots of sites all across that geography, and I was wondering, is rurality something that makes up part of the considerations about how to audit and where to go and who to speak to and so on?
I think that's a very good and relevant question. I mean, my view is that one of the things we've lost during COVID was the ability for our staff to go out and understand the geography and locations and nature of the particular council. It's something I think that we want to get back to more of as we are now going back on site more and more. So I would encourage my audit team to, as much as possible, to get round the council area and understand the services that are provided, the locations, the depots, the offices, local services and places. So that's definitely something I would be encouraging my team to physically get out there and understand the place that they're auditing. I think it comes as no surprise to my audit team of 25, 26 auditors is drawn from across Scotland, everywhere from Aberdeen, Inverness, Glasgow, Edinburgh as the main locations. So I think it's important that they spend more time within the geography of Parthink and Ross Council to understand the challenges and the location that you have here. So yes.
Councillor Barrett, you have a question.
Yes, just following up on what you said about the end of October sign-off, just looking at the diary, we've got an audit and risk meeting scheduled for the 25th of September, so presumably that's going to have to be reorganised. Is that right?
I'll ask the officers.
Thank you, convener. Can I just make sure everyone can hear me? Great, thank you. Thank you, convener. Thank you, Councillor Barrett, for the question. Short answer is yes. However, what I would say is that from an officer perspective, we will work to the deadlines that we have previously worked to, so we will have papers ready in good order, all being well, for the end of June. And indeed, we will be working on the basis that the audit is substantively complete by the end of September. But I think Brian and his team have made clear that the resource constraints upon them and anyway, expected turnaround on these days.
Thank you. I'm just aware it's also recess at the beginning of October, so that might cause issues. It's just timing, planning thing.
Okay, we'll do some research and work out an answer to that. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yeah. I have a question. How many auditors are you expecting to be working with Perth and Kinross Council?
It's a good question. I think there'd be a core of 4 or 5 really that we work with. I mean, predominantly the main contacts would be Maggie and Pamela, who's our senior auditor within the team. But I guess it would be in the region of 4 or 5. With the way our resourcing is currently and the staff that we have in post, that would be the core of them. We might draft other people in. For example, we have an individual within the team who's got the ICT expertise, so we'd bring them in to look at some of the ICT cybersecurity issues, for example.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions from members? Okay, I'll move on to comments. Are there any comments that members would like to make? Well, the comment I'd like to make is that I'm very glad to see Brian and Maggie down here, and it's very nice to meet them. I don't think anybody can underestimate the importance of the external audit to the smooth running of this organisation. It's a £500 million turnover business with 5,500 employees, and it's really important that we get that external view. And it's something I rely on entirely for getting a outside view of how well our finance team are doing. I mean, no pressure, Miss Mackenzie, but so I'd like to bring this paper to an end. So thank you very much for your support. Next paper is paper 6, internal audit update, and I'm going to ask Jackie to introduce the report.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. Thank you, convener, and apologies for the technical glitch there. The machine was working earlier. So work has continued in relation to planned audits and also some unplanned work such as requests for advice and ad hoc consultancy. Since the last committee, the National Fraud Initiative has commenced and matches have been released. Internal audit has supported staff in services in accessing the system and in recording the outcomes, and provided training where relevant to ensure that the relevant staff understand what they're doing and the reasons and how to undertake the necessary investigations. Regarding specific assignments, work has progressed significantly with 2 reports that I had hoped to present at this committee falling short on timelines. I apologise for this. As detailed on the agenda, these reports were not able to be fully consulted on in time for this meeting, but are very likely to be concluded and agreed this week. So apologies that they've not quite made this meeting. I do anticipate that they will be ready, as I say, very shortly, but also for some other assignments where reports findings are out for circulation and for clarification and factual accuracy with services, particularly thinking there of the partnership working audit, which is very close to completion also. Work has also been commenced and concluded in respect of the network support grant, which replaced the bus service operators grant, which appeared in the plan. That has been signed off now and required a little bit of additional work this time to enable us to understand some subtle changes in the certification process, but that has now been completed. On the appendix, you'll see that there are 2 assignments which don't contain an update in the status column. One of these, community engagement, the scoping is being progressed this week. And I had a recent discussion with our external audit colleagues regarding the payroll audit to ensure that we'll be working together to ensure that there's no duplication of effort in this area and also to coordinate regarding access to officers. So not putting an undue burden on services. I'm happy to take any questions.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just to ask Jackie how confident you are about the dates that are in here, given that we didn't get the ones we were meant to get this time. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm working on, because of the issues that have arisen with this particular committee, I'm working with service management teams to ensure that there's a clear process for these escalating through all service processes so that they will be here in time for the next committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Colin Stewart, you have some questions.
Thanks, convener. First off, in 5.2, internal audit is going to be authorising the network support grant claims in future. Is that a normal thing for an audit function to get involved in authorising presumably some sort of financial claim?
Thank you for that question. I would love not to. However, it's a requirement that that an independent auditor reviews the claim prior to it being submitted. We have asked before about whether or not this can be done within the service, and have been informed that it has to be independent, so either independent internal audit or from outside the organisation. So we've done it. But it's not what I would consider to be core internal audit business.
Okay, thanks for that. And that audit report is marked as Audit Committee February 2023, but so when is that one coming?
Apologies, that will be a complete typing error from when I anticipated that it would come prior to knowing the dates of audit committees. The audit was completed, I'm reporting to you now, in March 2023 rather than February 2023. Apologies for that that error there. There's no audit report coming out of that. There's no control issues were identified. And it was purely a certification. Had there been any significant control issues identified, I would have brought a report in front of you.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And then lastly, the other ones coming, is it eight or nine reports, audits getting reported at June 2023, and some of those are marked as you spoke about the Taste of Steel and the agency workers reports just getting finalised at the moment, but for the other ones, the status is ongoing. That seems like quite a concentrated amount of work that is ongoing at the moment that has to all come together at the same time. And I just wondered, I know Councillor Barrett was asking about, you know, sort of confidence about this, but does that not in itself create a problem if they're all sort of still ongoing and due to come in a concentrated period of time?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. It certainly would appear that there's a bit of bunching going on with the reports. Two of those assignments are down as consultancy assignments, which take place throughout the year. The report that will come to the committee in June will be a paragraph within the update report rather than a full report. So a lot of that reflects work that's been going on since April last year that I've been continuing on. So although there is a lot of activity going on just now, we're at the final stages of some and starting stages of others. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. But certainly by the end of May, I'm anticipating having the majority of these reported, if not all. The one that I've got a degree of question over my head is whether or not we'll be able to have the full payroll report ready by then, but we'll have the outcomes from that I'll be able to place reliance on when it comes to documenting my annual opinion.
Thanks for that. And one final one. Community engagement is down, and you mentioned that the scoping work was happening this week, I think you said. I'm not quite clear that I understand what an audit of community engagement would look like, but specifically, I know that elected members have got a session for feedback on the community engagement transformation review middle of next month. Does that audit involve actually going and speaking to communities, or will it involve speaking to elected members, you know, in order to gauge presumably levels of satisfaction with community engagement by the council?
Thank you for that question. I'm just going to load up the audit plan from last year to refamiliarise myself with the indicative scope from that. As I said, this is being scoped this week, and but the review was to look at the effectiveness of arrangements in place for engaging with communities. So it very much is looking at how we are arranging ourselves to enable us to engage with communities. Whether that scope then leads to us speaking with members of the public, I don't think it will necessarily go that far, but I do see that there may well be a role for engaging with a number of elected members.
Are there any other questions? Right. Okay. We'll now move on to comments. Are there any comments for Mrs. Clark? I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to thank Mrs. Clark for this update. Of course, we're all disappointed that we're not got the reports in front of us that we're hoping for. I think that applies to the internal audit team and to us as well. However, these are not life or death reports, and when we get them in due course, hopefully they'll be in complete and in excellent shape. So we'll look forward to receiving them when they're ready. We'll now move on to the last paper. Now, originally we had this planned as a private paper, but I've been asked if we can make it a public paper, and I'm happy to proceed with that. Are there any objections to making this a public paper? No. Okay, we'll make this public. Okay, this relates to internal audit follow-up and we can move on to this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. The 21 actions are due to be completed up until the end of March, and the majority of these have been completed. There are just a few which remain on the appendix, which is attached to this report. The actions that are outstanding from this period relate to the audit of cash collection, which was considered by the then audit committee in February 2020. The report itself was originally considered in private session, and a copy of the report, of the full report, has been provided to elected members prior to this meeting. As this session is now being held in public, I'd be grateful if the committee consideration relates to the agreed actions which are on the follow-up report, rather than to any wider findings which were raised within the audit report itself.
Do members have any questions on the report? Councillor Barrett.
Just wanted to ask on page 37 about 1910 cash action, an annual review exercise to be undertaken by intelligent clients. Is that a consultancy firm or something?
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. You're getting an impromptu duet here for myself and Mrs. Clark because we're sharing a microphone. Intelligent clients are council officers, senior finance managers. It was a term in use at the time. You'll be aware as part of the transformation reviews, we're currently looking at our arrangements for finance. So there's different terminology, but effectively it's senior finance officers within the council.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Collins-Stewart.
Thanks, convener. It's really just to ask about, so for example, that the action that Councillor Barrett was referring to there is to do an annual review exercise. But that was due to start in December 2020. So if the action date is now June 2023, then we'll have missed at least 2 of those annual review exercises, will we not?
Thank you, convener. Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for your question. Yes, I mean, I think there's a number of points I'd like to make for the committee, both by way of context and assurance, but I'll start off by offering my apology. There's a couple of actions here which should have been progressed, and I think that most committee members will understand that the last few months have been focused very much on the budget. I share that with 31 of our colleagues, but that doesn't mitigate against these actions not being complete. Second thing is context. I think context is all important here, and we did have effectively a very, very different operating model from March 2020 onwards for 2 years, and we're still to some extent recovering from that. I've got colleagues on the call, just to correct any misunderstanding around the numbers, but I've been trying to get a sense of where we are in terms of volumes of cash transactions and the scale of the issue. What we've got through our system is £45,000 in value of cash transactions in the current year. That's 474 transactions. By way of comparison, standing order, which is mostly council tax, 75.7 million or 93,837 transactions. Check, I have old-fashioned method of payment these days, but 2.98 million, 3,700 transactions. Credit cards, 2.7 million, 21,135 transactions. Debit cards, 11.7 million, 98,193 transactions. The point being that In terms of cash collection, the primary elements of cash collection are in car parking. There was £1.3 million taken, and even there, we're seeing an increase from contactless payments and from online apps such as Ringo, which is the council's provider for online payment. So the context, the environment since the original audit report in 2019 is very different. That doesn't mean that we don't need a strategy around cash collection. Members will be aware that a number of local authorities have just stopped processing cash, full stop. There are alternatives. Again, if we have a look at the figures, if we look at PayPoint, which members may be familiar with, spread across local newsagents and small shops, we've got roughly £2 million going through that, 28,868 transactions. An awful lot of that will be cash. Same with the post office. So it doesn't mitigate against putting the strategy together. That's sort of a grand way of saying we need to tidy up some of our operations around cash collection and just be clear what the direction of travel is. But I think in terms of the context, what I'd like members to be aware of is that in terms of the money we take in and importantly our customers' preference for paying the council, the prevalence of cash has shifted markedly over the last few years, as you may expect. Apologies, Councillor Stewart, that was quite a lengthy answer to your question.
No, that's fine. Thanks. And just in terms of the June 2023 date for these remaining actions, I'm conscious that after we've just put you through some months of effort around the budget, the next thing that will happen is at the end of this month, you'll start, I presume, preparing, you and the intelligent finance clients and the finance team will be focusing on doing the year-end accounts, and that will be a big piece of work. So can these still be managed alongside that during that sort of 3-month window?
I'd very much like to get these action points complete, Councillor Stewart, and off the desk. So without turning this into more of an exercise, it needs to be given the background I've given you, I think we can make some fairly quick adjustments and just get on with it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, so thank you for that. Do members have any comments to make? Councillor Barrett.
Just thanks to everybody for what you're fitting in with limited resources. Thank you.
Yep, I think I completely agree with that comment. Very grateful to all the work that gets done by our finance team, and yeah, we look forward to seeing the next set of reports. So that brings this meeting to a close. But before I shut it down completely, I'd like to thank all the members for attending today, our external auditors for coming along, and the officers for all their inputs into today's meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.